There was a bit of discussion that occurred earlier in this forum during the opening remarks about the Race to the Top award, which I think most of you are aware. Maryland was one of the states selected to receive that award. And one of the significant portions of that award is beginning to tie teacher evaluation to student performance. So we were wondering what policies you would seek the Board of Education to enact to carry out teacher evaluation and based on student performance, and what thoughts you had about that issue. Mr. Walker.
I think it is, for the portion that the county is responsible for, I think it's very difficult to tie teacher performance to student achievement if, because there are so many things that happen outside of the school that the teacher doesn't have control over. One of the things that I'd like to consider would be to include parent involvement as a part of that, so that if a parent is involved, we take roll when a student shows up for class. Teachers know what parents are volunteering, what parents are calling, what parents are emailing, what parents are connected to the education process of their child. I think it's incumbent upon the school to reach out to all parents, but it's also important that parents be involved. And I think that teachers certainly should get a pass for students whose parents or family members aren't involved. And then let's look at ways from the administration how we can engage those parents and provide support for those parents to be involved.
Okay. Mr. Proudfoot.
Thank you. I agree with what Mr. Walker's saying. I believe that if we're going to tie student assessment to teacher evaluations, which is coming with Race to the Top, we need to be careful how we formulate that. We need to look at multiple measures and not rely on one assessment like I mentioned in my introduction. I also believe we need to look at those factors that impact the classroom performance of our students, such as in kindergarten, the range of students that come into our classrooms is very wide, and we need to concentrate on early childhood education, such as a pre-kindergarten program, so that we have those students, especially in those Title I schools, that have the skills ready to start kindergarten with an equal playing ground.
Okay. Mr. Aquino.
Well, it's here, regardless of Race to the Top. The regulations in Maryland have been changed to provide for this. My concerns, so there's no misunderstanding, I really don't think that there should be an incentive pay for teachers related to student performance. I think that's a difficult situation to have. I do believe, however, that if we can determine an appropriate student growth model and limit the percentage of the evaluation that's based on that, then I think we should be able to have a reasonably fair system to assist in the evaluation of teachers. And any sort of evaluation system cannot and should not be based on any single measure. I think Mr. Proudfoot mentioned multiple measures. I think that's the phrase you're going to hear a lot of. So as long as it's balanced, and as long as local boards of education have a seat at the table and have some discretion in how they administer that, then I think we should be okay.
Ms. French.
The State Board has established a committee, and they're working this year to come up with a model using student growth as a measure, one measure. It will then be passed down to the locals, and local boards will have the opportunity to modify it to a certain extent. And when we do that, it will be with the Professional Education Association, it will be with the PTA Council, the Citizens Advisory Committee, and with parents in discussion of how we do that. But one thing we need to remember is that when a student is with an ineffective teacher, they can lose up to 2 years of academic time. And so even though it may be difficult, this is the right way to go. But we need to do it fairly and carefully so that teachers are not penalized with one assessment. It has to be multiple measures.
Any other responses? Ms. Valancourt.
I ran for school board in 2004 when the No Child Left Behind Act was just getting kicked in. And at the time I had mentioned to a crowd similar to this that I felt it was a terribly flawed piece of legislation, albeit with its heart in the right place. And that comment drew audible gasps as people were how can you say such a thing? But it turned out to be an accurate assessment of the situation, and I'm afraid that the race to the top is going to be similar. There will be unintended consequences, and this is a big one. The possibilities of doing something terribly counterproductive by tying teacher pay and incentives and evaluations into children's and students' test scores is fraught with all kinds of danger. I think we should be evaluating our teachers, and we should be doing a much better job of it. But we have to keep in mind that learning is not linear, and children are all very different.
Mr. Meshkin.
It amazes me what we'll do for $800,000 over 4 years when we're planning on spending $3 billion. It's really somewhat shocking when you think about it. Educating our kids is very serious business, and I think we need to take somewhat of a business perspective when it comes to this. Right now, we don't do much measurement when it comes to the success of our students. We don't know exactly what we need to do in the second and third grade when they make that big transition to move the needle just enough to ensure we have success in high school. But we have a pretty large data set. We don't do enough with the data that we already have, and I think it's a shame that we're allowing the state and the federal government to impose those definitions on us. I think we need to do a better job of not just looking at student growth in test scores, which is the follow-up to just saying student growth. We need to look at student growth across a bunch of different measures. We measure our children with grades on a quarterly basis. We've been doing that for a very long time. There are a lot of things that we can look at to measure success, and I think we need to do that whether there's a race at the top or not, because our kids are engaged in a race for success.
Mr. Ballinger.
I'm glad to hear, I guess, some of the candidates now are talking about race to the top, and maybe their belief that race to the top wasn't the best decision that we made in this county. Because this has been a very heated debate between my two friends sitting next to me and myself. I was the first candidate to come out and say race to the top did not benefit the county and our students. Our superintendent, Mr. Cousins, came out and said it'll probably cost us more to implement race to the top than what we're getting back. And also, we need to make sure that we, and I say we, and that means every parent, every citizen has the input and gives a direction to where we need to go in this county. I would differ in one thing. I am for giving incentives to teachers who want to take on the challenges that we ask them to do. Like many of us who work in the business world, when we take on challenges and we're successful, we like to be rewarded on that. So where I would like to see us use incentives and encourage teachers to take on the big challenges that we have.